Surprise! It's your favorite comic book character, and you had no idea they were coming. But which superhero cameos were the most surprising of all? The 2021 threequel Spider-Man No Way Home was packed full of guest stars and cameos. The third MCU Spidey movie brought back an array of characters from previous films, all played by their original actors, such as Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, and J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. But arguably, the most surprising cameo was that of Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock. Following the abrupt cancellation of the Netflix Daredevil series in 2018, fans were not optimistic about the prospects of Cox returning to the role. After 3 years with no news, it seemed more likely that Marvel would cast the new actor rather than bring Cox back. Yet, when No Way Home hit theaters, there he was, advising Peter Parker on his tricky legal situation. It was a cameo many fans had dreamed of, but few saw coming. Not long after the release of No Way Home, Marvel announced that Cox would be returning once more in a brand new Disney Plus series, Daredevil Born Again. Meanwhile, fans' appetite for more Daredevil was satiated with a handful of guest appearances in She-Hulk Attorney at Law.
This guy's really kind of doing it for me.
In 2016, Deadpool shocked and delighted audiences with its over-the-top graphic violence and charming knack for vulgarity. The movie also featured X-Men stalwart Colossus, who tries and fails to convince Ryan Reynolds' titular Merc with a mouth to join the iconic team of mutants. While many fans were probably hoping for more X-Men characters to cameo in Deadpool 2, few probably expected it, due to the decidedly adult nature of the series. Nevertheless, the studio successfully kept one major cameo appearance under wraps. And this time, it's not just one actor who turns up out of the blue. It's an entire team. James McAvoy, Nicholas Hoult, Evan Peters, Ty Sheridan, Cody Smith-McPhee, and Alexander Shipp all appear briefly as their respective X-Men characters. It seems like a lifetime ago now, but when Iron Man first hit theaters in 2008, cinematic universes were a far-off dream, and just about everything in the movie felt fresh and new. From the charm of beleaguered actor Robert Downey Jr. to the high-flying visual spectacle of the armored hero himself, audiences were blown away by how inventive the film showed itself to be. And there was one cameo in the film that almost nobody expected. One that came for the very first time after the credits rolled. A post-credits scene that set a new standard for stingers. The moment sees Samuel L. Jackson make his Marvel debut as super spy Nick Fury. Emerging from the shadows, Fury lays the foundation for the groundbreaking superhero team-up, the Avengers. Despite leaks suggesting that this cameo was in the cards, Marvel did an excellent job of throwing fans off the scent, tossing out rumors of a cameo from Hilary Swank, and omitting the scene in press screening. Of course, even those who saw it coming could never have imagined the future it'd create. Henry Cavill was one of the first actors cast in the DC Extended Universe. He first played Superman in 2013's Man of Steel before returning for Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Justice League. Then, for a while, Cavill seemed to totally disappear from the DCEU, leading some fans to worry that he would not be returning to the role for future movies. Flash forward to 2022, when it was announced on the eve of the release of Black Adam that Cavill was to wear the cape once more. It turned out that Dwayne Johnson had used his star power to convince Warner Brothers to bring Cavill back into the fold, beginning with a brief cameo at the end of his film.
Black Adam. We should talk.
Teasing a future showdown between Johnson's anti-hero powerhouse and Cavill's Man of Steel, this scene appeared to be the perfect setup for an epic sequel. Unfortunately, all this went up in smoke pretty much as soon as writer-director James Gunn was placed in charge of the new DC universe. Gunn opted to wipe the slate clean and start fresh. In 2023, he cast David Corenswet as the new Superman. By 2021, Marvel was on a roll with their cameos, and the MCU was consistently delivering surprise appearances in each and every new film. In Eternals, they dropped one of the biggest yet, global music star Harry Styles. And prior to the movie's release in November 2021, pretty much nobody had any idea it was coming. Based on the comics of the same name, Eternals introduced a team of immortal beings who have lived undetected on Earth for centuries. Each with their own unique superpowers, they come together to confront a race of deadly creatures known as the Deviants. With a roster of major stars on the cast list, there wasn't any real need to add another famous face. Yet, the movie's post-credits scene gave us one regardless. Styles played Eros in his brief appearance in Eternals, a character better known to fans as Star Fox. Though the scene seems to suggest a bigger role for the character, there's been no hint of a future appearance since. Will Star Fox return, or is he destined to remain a mere footnote in MCU history? Only time will tell. In Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Michael B. Jordan reprised his role as Eric Killmonger, the villain who previously attempted to take Wakanda's throne in Black Panther. Following the tragic death of Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman, the sequel pivoted its story to center on King T'Challa's sister, Shuri, as she takes on the mantle of the Black Panther. Forced to confront her own destiny, Shuri finds herself in the ancestral plane where the spirits of the dead Wakandan leaders now reside. Anything could have happened. Here, John Connie's King T'Chaka could have made another appearance. Or Marvel could have attempted some digital trickery to include the late Boseman. Instead, Wakanda Forever went for the ultimate rug pull, bringing Shuri face to face with Wakanda's greatest enemy. Even better, Killmonger's cameo actually plays a key role in affecting Shuri's character arc, as he urges her to pursue a violent path of bloody revenge on the enemies of Wakanda. More than anything, though, it was a real treat to see Jordan return to the role he played so well. Ever since the MCU began, fans have been suggesting their own dream casting decisions for their favorite superheroes. And when Marvel announced that the Fantastic Four were getting the reboot treatment under the MCU banner, the most popular choice to play Mr. Fantastic was The Office star John Krasinski. Well, Marvel was listening loud and clear, and the studio decided to give fans their dream come true with a cameo from the actor in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Hello, Stephen.
Fantastic Four. Didn't you guys chart in the 60s?
It wasn't quite what fans really wanted, of course, as this version of the character was from an alternate timeline. But Krasinski showed up as Mr. Fantastic nonetheless. Much to their chagrin, however, there was no larger plan for Krasinski to reprise the role in the new Fantastic Four film, and this Reed Richards is swiftly killed off during a battle against the Scarlet Witch. Still, the fact that Marvel paid homage to one of the biggest fan casting rumors in recent memory stands as a testament to the studio's appreciation for its audiences. John Krasinski's appearance as Mr. Fantastic wasn't the only cameo in Multiverse of Madness, though. Since the film's trailer gave away the return of Patrick Stewart as Professor X, the next most surprising cameo probably came in the form of Anson Mount as the Inhuman leader Black Bolt. Mount had played the character on TV once before, marking one of the few bright spots in the short-lived and much-derided 2017 ABC series Inhumans. That series was so poorly received by fans, however, that nobody ever expected Marvel to reference it again. When the Doctor Strange sequel debuted, Mount's brief and gruesome return to the Black Bolt role came as something of a surprise, in more ways than one. The DCEU was built with a grand plan to spawn countless sequels, spin-offs, and team-up movies. When Ben Affleck was first cast as the Caped Crusader for Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, the studio intended for him to return in a movie of his own, one that Affleck would direct. While a confluence of factors led to that project ultimately being scrapped, it was originally thought that Affleck's Batman would face off against Joe Manganiello as the deadly sharpshooting assassin Deathstroke. To get the ball rolling, director Zack Snyder decided to include the actor in the final post-credits scene of 2017's Justice League, although it appears that Joss Whedon changed it slightly when he took over the film. This scene also brought back Jesse Eisenberg as a bald-headed Lex Luthor, who enlists the services of the mercenary Deathstroke in an effort to take down Superman and his new gang of super friends.
To put it plainly, shouldn't we have a league of our own?
Sadly, the mixed response to Justice League helped usher the DCEU towards its untimely fate, leaving this scene as just one of many teases that will never be followed through. In this era of cinematic universes and endless multiverses, it's easy to expect superhero movies to deliver surprising cameos. As a result, audiences have gotten used to seeing one fellow hero dropping in to pay a visit to another. However, in Thor Ragnarok, director Taika Waititi did something a little different, enlisting the services of one of Hollywood's biggest stars for an uncredited walk-on role. In a memorable moment early in the film, Thor arrives back home on Asgard, where a group of theater actors is putting on a stage performance of Thor and Loki's adventures. Playing Thor is Chris Hemsworth's brother, Luke, while Odin is played by Sam Neill, who had previously worked with Waititi on Hunt for the Wilder People. But the biggest and most secretive cameo was none other than Matt Damon as Loki. While insiders managed to spoil this cameo beforehand, which tends to happen a lot nowadays, it would have no doubt been quite the shock for any audience members who weren't aware of it beforehand. Unexpected cameos are fun enough when they're an award-winning megastar or a beloved fan-favorite character returning after a long absence. But it's something else entirely when a cameo offers a good old-fashioned head trip. Such was the case at the conclusion of the 2019 film Shazam. After a rousing, family-friendly superhero adventure that saw Zachary Levi and Mark Strong duking it out as colorful comic book adversaries, the post-credits scene introduced one of the wackiest villains in comic book lore, the evil worm known as Mr. Mind. In this scene, the villainous Dr. Sivana sits in a prison cell after his diabolical plans are thwarted by the movie's hero. Through the bars of his cell, Mr. Mind arrives to propose the two team up. This was unexpected enough for fans familiar with the character, but it's hard to overstate how weird it was for those who weren't. One of the wildest cameos in any recent blockbuster superhero movie, Mr. Mind's appearance garnered plenty of praise from DC fans. But those same excited moviegoers were disappointed when the film's sequel didn't include him as the next big bad. relegating him again to a small post-credits cameo appearance.
Oh, damn it!
After Marvel got its multiverse rolling with Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home, DC attempted to outrun them with 2023's The Flash. The film sends the Scarlet Speedster across multiple alternate realities and timelines, uniting him with Batman, who is played by Michael Keaton for the first time since 1992's Batman Returns. But that's not all. The Flash is filled with a bevy of blink-and-you'll-miss-it cameos, including archival footage and CGI recreations of the likes of Adam West, Christopher Reeve, and Helen Slater. One of the cleverest cameos in the movie is the appearance of Nicolas Cage, who finally gets his chance to play the Man of Steel 25 years after he almost starred in the doomed Tim Burton film Superman Lives. The closest he ever came to donning the blue and red spandex was in a screen test for the late 90s project. But now fans have finally been given a proper glimpse of Cage in the role. In a further nod to the hardcore fans, Cage's Superman does battle with an infamous giant mechanical spider that was said to be at the heart of Kevin Smith's Superman Lives screenplay. When Barry Allen goes looking to change the course of history in The Flash, he seeks the help of Batman. First, it's Ben Affleck, then Michael Keaton. But there is still one more version of the Dark Knight that makes an appearance in the movie. Following his multiverse adventure, The Flash returns to what he thinks is his own reality, only to be confronted by a different version of Bruce Wayne. This time, though, it's George Clooney, who played the Caped Crusader in the reviled 1997 movie Batman and Robin. Clooney's return is remarkable, not just because it was a surprise, but because of how hated he was when he first played the role. Batman and Robin remains the lowest-rated Batman movie on Rotten Tomatoes, and is regularly ridiculed by fans and critics alike. The fact that the studio would bring the actor back and remind audiences of one of the biggest failures in the character's history is quite something. But that Clooney agreed to do it, even after admitting how bad his Batman movie was, takes it to a whole new level. Following director Ang Lee's ill-fated attempt to bring Hulk to the big screen in 2003, Marvel decided to reboot the character from the ground up. They also decided to work this relaunch into their new cinematic universe. The second MCU movie, The Incredible Hulk, hit theaters in the summer of 2008. The film attempted a more serious, gritty approach to the tale of the Hulk, this time featuring Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. Battling with his angry alter ego, Banner goes on the run from General Thaddeus Ross, who has created a monster of his own. Coming mere months after the release of Iron Man, the film found itself hot on the heels of an unexpected smash sensation. Marvel decided to leverage the overnight popularity of Tony Stark to help bring viewers into The Incredible Hulk, calling upon Robert Downey Jr. to appear in the movie's very last scene. At the end of the movie, Tony Stark arrives to console a recently defeated General Ross, and casually tells him they're assembling a team of heroes, not dissimilar to Samuel L. Jackson's appearance at the end of Iron Man. Though perhaps intended to tease the Avengers, Marvel mostly ignored General Ross's involvement in this early phase of the MCU. Later, a Blu-ray exclusive one-shot mini-movie called The Consultant explained why Stark had approached Ross in the first place.
If we want the General to refuse this request, then we have to send someone who will truly annoy him.
Good old Tony Stark. The first X-Men film featured the first big screen cameo from Stan Lee in a Marvel movie, in which he played a hot dog vendor on the beach. The standout star of the film, of course, was Hugh Jackman, the Aussie newcomer whose turn as Wolverine made him an instant star. Every subsequent X-Men featured Jackman in a starring role, until 2011 when the franchise rebooted with X-Men First Class. Still, director Matthew Vaughn found a fun way to include him in the party. Set decades before the first X-Men, First Class introduces a whole new cast of characters, as well as some familiar ones now played by younger actors. This includes James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as Professor Xavier and Eric Lensher. Together, the two mutants embark on a journey to recruit new mutants to their fledgling superhero team. In one particularly surprising moment, Xavier and Lensher walk into a bar, and before they can ask anything to the surly, cigar-chomping Logan, they're rebuffed with quite the expletive. Though it's only a momentary cameo, with Jackman delivering just 3 words of dialogue, it carried along his unbroken streak of appearances in X-Men films, one that would only end with 2019's Dark Phoenix. Though many fans still see X-Men First Class as a reboot, it was really more of a prequel. After all, they brought back Hugh Jackman for his cameo as Wolverine rather than recast him altogether. And he wasn't the only one either. More than just a nod to prior franchise continuity, the cameo comes when Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique attempts to seduce Michael Fassbender's Magneto. Magneto makes an offhanded remark about her being too young, and as quick as you can say Rebecca Romijn, she morphs into the model-turned-actor who'd already played Mystique in 3 previous movies. The transformation lasts only a moment, but it's one of the rare times when Romijn got to play the character in her natural appearance, free of all the blue body paint for which the character is so well known. Romijn goes uncredited for her appearance, but no true fan of the X-Men films missed this cameo, which paid due respect to the star who helped make Mystique one of Marvel's most popular villains.
Perfection.
After 3 X-Men movies, it became decidedly clear that Hugh Jackman was the star, and that the character of Wolverine was the real draw for moviegoers. With that knowledge, Fox decided to ditch the rest of the team and give the fans what they really wanted: a number of movies all about Logan. Though the first X-Men Origins Wolverine wasn't so well received, its sequels made for a huge improvement. The studio even used 2013's The Wolverine to help set up a separate X-Men sequel. To do it, they surprised audiences with an appearance from both Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellan. Back in the roles of Professor X and Magneto, the 2 renowned actors return in the film's post-credits scene, in which Logan makes his way through an airport. There, he's confronted by Magneto, who wants Logan's help to face a dangerous new threat. Logan is surprised to find that the villain is accompanied by none other than Professor X, who convinces him to join their cause. But no one was as surprised as the audience, who had no idea the solo Wolverine sequel would end with a lead-in to X-Men Days of Future Past. Following his critically acclaimed horror thriller The Sixth Sense, director M. Night Shyamalan brought us the comic book-inspired movie Unbreakable. Bruce Willis played David Dunn, a security guard who realizes he has superhuman abilities and uses them to take on a twisted terrorist named Mr. Glass. Though there was much talk of a sequel after the release of Unbreakable, nothing came of it, and Shyamalan soon moved on to different projects. Then, in his 2016 film Split, fans got the shock of a lifetime when Willis made a cameo as Dunn in the story's final moments. In this eye-popping reveal, Dunn is seen sitting in a diner watching news footage of James McAvoy's character, the Beast, confirming that Split was, in fact, a sequel of sorts to Unbreakable. A full trilogy would be completed 3 years later. 2019's Glass united Willis, Jackson, and McAvoy in a three-way showdown for the ages. One of the greatest cameos that Marvel ever pulled off came courtesy of writer-director James Gunn, who made his blockbuster movie debut with Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014. At the end of the movie's credits, we're taken back to the smoldering rubble of the Collector's Domain. Previously a veritable treasure trove of Easter eggs, much of his precious collection is ruined. But one prized specimen decides to stick around and get in a few quips: Howard the Duck. This mischievous mallard was last seen on the big screen in 1986's Howard the Duck, which is widely regarded as one of the worst comic book movies ever made.
Howard, you really are the worst.
For some reason, the idea of a wisecracking space duck never really resonated with audiences, though the character in the comics has always been a cult favorite among a certain segment of the fan base. James Gunn, it seems, was one of them. His decision to include Howard provided a delightful acknowledgement of Marvel's strange history and proved just how weird the comics can get. And what better place to include him than in the movie with the violent raccoon and the talking tree? Howard would later appear in cameos in both Guardians of the Galaxy sequels, Avengers Endgame, and an episode of the animated Disney Plus series What If.
You know what they say when you're out of luck. Always go duck.
I'm pretty sure no one says that.
Oh, they say it.
Really?
Totally.
Created in 1938, Superman may have the longest history of any superhero on screen. His first on-screen appearance came in the early 1940s, as the star of the iconic Fleischer Studio cartoons. Superman entered the world of live action in 1948, in a series of movie serials starring Kirk Allen. He has since been played by a number of different performers, with more set to take the reins in the near future. This long and storied history has allowed actors from past Superman stories to cameo from time to time, and in 2006's Superman Returns, longtime fans spotted a very important one indeed. At the beginning of the film, we're introduced not just to Lex Luthor, but also the wealthy widow he married and conned out of her fortune. The woman is only seen for a moment, but a true Superman fanatic may have recognized her face. That's because Luthor's wife is played by none other than Noel Neill, who starred opposite Kirk Allen as the original Lois Lane in the 40s. And Superman Returns wasn't her first cameo either. She appeared as Lois Lane's mother, Ella, in 1978's Superman the movie, as well as the Superboy TV series in the late 80s. In 2015, Marvel Studios released Ant-Man, a new franchise addition to the MCU starring Paul Rudd as the miniaturized hero Scott Lang. Considering how obscure the character had been in the greater pop culture zeitgeist up to that point, you might be surprised to learn that this wasn't the first time he had been seen on screen. Unofficially, Ant-Man also made a brief TV appearance back in the late 70s, and the MCU movie pays tribute to this, with a cameo from the actor who first played the part of the incredible shrinking hero. That original Ant-Man harks from way back to 1979, when Saturday Night Live featured a sketch called Superhero Party.
We got a present for you.
What?
Kryptonite!
In the sketch, Superman and Lois Lane host a cocktail party with guests ranging from The Flash and Hulk to Spider-Man and the Invisible Woman, all played by various SNL cast members. Among the more famous comic characters at the party was Ant-Man, played by original series star Garrett Morris. Audiences may have forgotten the first live-action appearance of Ant-Man, but director Peyton Reed didn't, and he cast Morse in the role of a confused cab driver. For such a small hero, that cameo pays some huge respect to the man who is technically the world's first Ant-Man. Everyone knows that Edward Norton wasn't the first actor to play Hulk on screen. Eric Bana portrayed him in the 2003 film Hulk, while Lou Ferrigno starred in the beloved 70s TV series. Ferrigno appeared briefly in The Incredible Hulk, in which he played a security guard. He also voiced the Hulk himself. But one other Hulk actor showed up in The Incredible Hulk. Paul Soles shows up in a small role, playing a kindly old man at a pizza shop who helps Norton's Bruce Banner hide from the government. You would be forgiven if you didn't recognize Soles, as he was never actually seen on screen as the Hulk. In fact, Soles was the first actor to ever play the role of Bruce Banner on screen, voicing him in the 1966 Saturday morning cartoon Marvel Superheroes. As it stands, his part in The Incredible Hulk wound up being the second to last film in his career, as Soles passed away in 2021.